There are places in the world that do not invite. Isla Presidio, off the western shore of Monte Palma, is one of them. The Spanish built a fort here in the early 17th century. What remains is barely a suggestion. Stone courses swallowed by vine and strangler fig, invisible unless you already know where to look. Later came the prisoners. For nearly 2 centuries, the Presidio San Cristobal housed the colony's most inconvenient men. The crossing was short enough to be practical and far enough to be final. In 1895, the prisoners were gone, and the island found a new purpose, no less sorrowful. The Sanatorio de la Misericordia operated here for 60 years, until it too closed in 1955 and was left to the jungle. A decade ago, a telecommunications company erected a satellite array near the summit. It was abandoned within 2 years. The dishes remain, pointed at nothing. Today, a Coast Guard station operates on the island's northern tip, a helipad, a patrol vessel, the minimum presence the sea demands. It is not a posting anyone requests twice. The people of Monte Palma do not go to Isla Presidio. They do not build there. They do not linger in its waters. Some places simply do not want to be held.
Hello, and welcome back to Monte Palma. Sorry for the delay in getting this episode out. A few weeks ago we had the patch and the hotfix that followed it, and of course, like usual, it completely broke my game. After the patch, I was experiencing the same bug as everyone else. I think my game was taking over an hour to load, which just made it really impractical to get into the game to get anything done. The game was also very unstable, so it just made sense to just leave it alone until they put out a hotfix. And of course, when they put out the hotfix, it just broke everything completely. I had so many graphical issues, so many problems. The game kept crashing, a lot of graphical bugs, a lot of the assets were not loading properly, and I really didn't have a clear idea of how to go about fixing it. For me, the solution turned out to be to rebuild the playsets from scratch. I had to do this a few mods and assets at a time, building it up little by little, making sure everything was functional, there was no conflicts, no problems, and it took a few days to reassemble everything. It also didn't help that I was also out of town for a few days during this time as well, so it just took a lot longer to get everything back up and running. It seems to be functional now. I'm not having any real issues. At the time of recording this, the game felt fairly stable, but I wasn't 100% sure. There's a few glitchy things still going on, so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for this episode. I didn't want to commit to a major building project only to have the game crash and having, lose a whole hours of work here. So I was trying to think, well, what can I do? Basically, test out the game, make sure it's stable again, and get a little work done and get a video out. So what I thought I would do for this episode is, rather than build anything in the major, like in the downtown area, we're gonna fly out to this little island on the edge of the map here. I really imagine it could have been like a resort island or something like that, but we don't really have the functionality to build true island, like separate island builds. Like, you need a road connection to this to make it functional. So what I'm going to do out here is going to be just a small detailing project. It's going to be a short episode, as I'm just basically making sure the game is stable. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to clear off the island. I'm going to get rid of all the trees. And the idea for this build is a collection of ruined structures and abandoned settlements. First thing I'm going to be building here is the ruins for probably what would be a Spanish fort from the Colonial era. I don't really have a name for this or even a history for this. By the time we're done, this is going to be pretty much completely covered in jungle. But I just want to get it here, establish the earliest historical point for this island. The next structure I'm going to be building is going to be a penal colony. This would have been in use from the late 17th century into maybe the mid 19th century. I'm going to be just building it out of static assets. This is elementary school from the UK playset. And this is the jail extension from the police station from the northeast building set. And I'm just going to assemble them here into a structure that I think makes a reasonable looking prison or penal colony building. This is probably a little more elaborate than what actually would have been here if this was a real place. What I'm imagining here is what the building form would have looked like, its final form before it was abandoned. I'm just having a bit of fun here. I'm imagining what the history and the lore of the region would have been like. I'm using one of the towers from one of the fire stations. I forget which one here. This is probably a little too modern looking, but I think after I'm done detailing it, I think it'll blend in fairly well. The next thing I'm going to be building is an abandoned leper colony this would have been active from the mid 19th century up until probably the early 20th century. It was very common to establish these colonies far away from major urban centers and population centers. Islands were very commonly used for this purpose. And because this island was already known as a penal colony, it wouldn't be a place that people would really want to go. So it makes a bit of logical sense that this would also be a good location for a leper colony. I also thought it might be a bit of fun for modern times if this was a Coast Guard station. Not quite abandoned yet, but definitely in decline and probably lacking a lot of funding. At this point, I don't really have a clear idea of how I'm going to be building this, so I'm just putting down a few assets here, just trying a few things out. I'll be coming back to this a little later in the episode to switch it around and give it a little more thought. I wanted some sort of building structure, and I don't remember what asset this is actually from. I was just trying it out here. I don't really like it, and I will change this as a little later in the episode. I'm just going to add a few sandy beaches to the island as well. For the last structure I'm going to add to the island, I thought it might be interesting to add something that was recently abandoned, so say within the last 10 to 20 years. And I decided to go with a radio dish. I also wanted a building to go along with it, but I didn't want it to be too large, so I just have to hunt around in here until I find something suitable of a small size. I believe this is one of the expansions to the Eastern European elementary school or high school, I can't remember which, but it's a good small structure to go along with this. I don't really need a road in here, but I can use the constant slope function on the road to kind of draw in a plausible looking road to the top of the mountain. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to really be seen by the time I'm done. It's going to be mostly covered in jungle, but I just want the idea that there used to be a road, or still is a road, going up to the top of the mountain here. I'm going to turn one of these islands into a bit of a rocky outcropping from the ocean. These come as part of the asset pack for the cliffs, put out by Joe Rogiski. I hope I am saying that correctly. I am terrible with names. Please forgive me if it's incorrect. I just want to say, Joe has put out so many assets so far for the game. Just incredible looking buildings. These cliffs and rocks are just amazing looking. He's added so much to the game so far. It is just wonderful to see all this. Of course, if we have a Coast Guard station, we probably need a lighthouse as well. For all this, I'm building it out of static assets. There's no road connections here, so this is the easiest way to build this without having any issues. You wouldn't be able to actually place a lighthouse on these rocks, but it's kind of a classic image of a lighthouse on a rocky outcropping, isn't it? The next step is to lay down some surfaces. I'm going to be doing this all in one pass. What I've been finding is it just makes it a little easier and faster to do. Rather than detailing out each building project separately, it's just group the like tasks together and do those all at the same time, and then build things up in sort of like layers. Now for the surfaces, we're not going to, by the time I'm done, we're not going to really see much of the surfaces. They're kind of like an undercoat just to establish a base coat for color. Not necessarily that I actually want to see these surfaces when I'm finished. Of course, the leper colony will need a church. I'm going to be using a stone chapel here, a really nice little asset, but it needs a road connection, and I have no roads here. So I'm using StarQ's Advanced Building Manager here. It has built right into it. We could turn any player-made asset into a static ploppable now. Once I do that, I have a building that doesn't need a road connection, and I can get rid of the original. I can't tell you how useful this addition is going to be. I mean, this makes so many building projects very doable and easy to do now. We also don't need those massive static ploppable sets. We could just create static ploppables on the fly as we need them, which is wonderful. I'm also going to add some rune structures around the leper colony as well. So this is made up from rubble pillars and piles of rubble. Once we start adding the surface decals here, it'll start to tie everything together. We will, hide all these, ugly kind of lines around all the surfaces here. Everything will get blended together and it'll look like one continuous surface. We have to remember this is going to be like a jungle rainforest environment. These buildings have been abandoned for decades or sometimes centuries. The jungle and the humid environment is going to have quite a impact on the structures. So I have to add a lot of detailing to the buildings themselves to make them look like they've been in a humid, wet environment decaying for decades. And of course, it's when we start adding in all the trees that things really start to come together. I'll be honest here, for a jungle-like environment like this would probably be completely overgrown with jungle at this point. It's essentially the same technique for all the other rune structures on the island. The only variation here would be, it would depend on how old the structure actually is. Obviously, the longer it's been here, the more overgrown and decayed it would be. Now, at first, I thought the satellite dish would be impossible to detail to make it look like it's been decaying out in the jungle for, a decade or more. But it turns out it's just created out of a whole bunch of flat panels here, so decals easily will attach to each and every one of these. It's a bit extreme, the amount of decals needed to do this, but I really like the results. There are a few limitations, of course. You can't add decals to the underside of this, so it only looks good from the top down, but I'm really, really happy that I was able to do this at all. So this looks really good. I found this asset on the mod store. It's the White Tower. It's a Russian water tower, and this is perfect. This is the exact sort of structure I'd want for a nearly abandoned Coast Guard station. So I'm going to get rid of the other building, and we're going to move this into place. The wonderful thing about this, it's already detailed in a way that I really don't have to add anything more to it. It's rusty, it's streaked with stains and stuff already. It's perfect. And as a bonus, it's a functioning water tower that doesn't need a road connection. To make it look a little more like a Coast Guard station, I'm going to be using the radio tower from the Japanese police headquarters. It's the right scale for this building. And as a final step here, I'm just going to be adding a bit of wear and tear to the helicopter pad. I will need a dock for boats, for Coast Guard boats for the station here. I'm going to be using a leisure pier. I tried to find a Coast Guard boat on the mod store. There is a US Coast Guard ship, but this isn't the US, so it didn't make much sense. I just had to delete off the lights there. Those didn't seem appropriate. And a little bit of final detailing here around the base. And that brings us to the end of this episode. think I was able to figure out all the lingering issues I was having with the game. By this point, it seems to be running fairly stable. So for next week's episode, we'll be able to return to normal episodes, normal building projects. Next week, we're going to be back in Redmont. Just a heads up for everybody, I am out of town more often during the summer months, so the schedule is going to be a little more erratic for the next 3 months or so. Anyway, I will see everybody in the next episode. Take care.